I did.
Okay, I like the little soft. Oh, he does. Hey, he does what you do. He goes around the world.
He's on a roll.
I mean, the score that weren't numbers. We go 251 and 252. So you pulled those five out.
Yeah, they went out.
Something like that.
They were people.
Oh, interesting.
No, what the graph is.
They were.
At some point you wouldn't mind doing a couple.
Whoa.
The job just has to be done.
It's you're literally just move it up.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I wanted to offer some context on this Arlington National Cemetery Trump visit and just give you a little bit of perspective of what goes on behind the scenes with the Army, Arlington National Cemetery, and the civilians who work both in the cemetery and liaison with the U.S. Army. Today, 20-something minutes ago, the Army Defends Arlington Cemetery staffer pushed aside by Trump aides. This is supposedly the controversy is over. They even stated at one point that it became violent or physical at one point, and then both sides kind of backed away from that. But just real quickly, it says the Army on Thursday defended an Arlington National Cemetery employee found herself in a brief confrontation with two men working for the Trump campaign, saying she acted with professionalism during the encounter and that her reputation had been unfairly attacked by the former president's representatives. The altercation occurred Monday when the woman sought to enforce federal regulations barring partisan political activity at Arlington National Cemetery, a sprawling facility managed by the U.S. Army and the final resting place for more than 400,000 U.S. troops, veterans, and their family members. The Trump campaign has maintained its people did nothing wrong, and they found her lack of professionalism despicable. Both J.D. Vance and the administration or the Trump's team talked about it and discussed it and said they were horrified by what happened. It says former President Donald Trump was there to mark the third anniversary of the suicide bombing of the 13 U.S. troops that were killed during the evacuation of Afghanistan, a horrible tragedy. Cemetery staff had laid out guidelines in advance of the visit that made it clear there was to be no photography during a graveside visit in Section 60, a 14-acre plot where many veterans of recent wars are buried. After the employees sought to reinforce those rules, she was abruptly pushed aside by people in Trump's entourage. The incident was unfortunate. It's also unfortunate that ANC employee and her professionalism has been unfairly attacked, according to the U.S. Army. So, if you don't know, Arlington National Cemetery is right in what's called the Military District of Washington. It's managed by the 3rd Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard, as well as by Arlington National Cemetery's staff. Feeling you get as an American being on hallowed ground, whether it's at Robert E. Lee's mansion, at JFK's burial site, or the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, you feel the energy of that place where so many are buried. Section 60 is below the Tomb of the Unknowns, and it's typically where you find veterans of recent wars, and many of my own friends are buried in Section 60. A lot of those that served and sacrificed recently in both the Global War on Terror and also when this suicide bombing took place during the evacuation are buried in this section. Now, I was a guard in 1998. I was 18 years old. I earned my tomb identification badge. You want to see something real funny? This is the 19-year-old in me who got, it says freedom isn't free, but the I kind of looks like a J, so freedom jisn't free kind of, and it's all faded, but it's really cool because that's the tomb identification badge that I earned on badge holder 470 out of approximately 600 badge holders awarded since 1948. I take great pride in both my service in 1998 as a tomb guard. I also was a sergeant at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers, which means I was a team leader in the infantry, but also a sergeant at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers. And I was a tomb guard trainer. So I trained, I assessed, did a TDY assessment and selection, and then trained new guys to become tomb guards before they were sent to their reliefs. You could skip ahead if you're not interested in the history here, but the reliefs at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers is broken down into 3 reliefs: first, second, and third relief. We guard the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier since the 40s, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, rain, snow, sleet, or heat. I've been in all of those weather conditions. And you go through a very rigorous process before you're put onto a relief, where it takes the average tomb guard 6 to 9 months to earn the tomb identification badge. I know the Sentinel's Creed by heart, by memory. I learned 20-something pages of Arlington National Cemetery history that's relevant to the Tomb of the Unknowns, and also Arlington National Cemetery. Line 6 of the Sentinel's Creed says, "My standard will remain perfection," so we're focused on being perfect. I used to polish my medals and spit shine my boots or my shoes, my tomb guard shoes, into the early morning hours, preparing myself for the next guard rotation. During that rotation, it's typically like a fireman schedule: day on, day off, day on, day off, day on, and 4 days off all year round. But you also guard the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier on 30-minute walks during the summertime with about a 6 to 7 minute guard change. You average 6 to 8 walks when I was a guard of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier during the day in the summertime. And it's every hour on the hour during the wintertime. And we also guard the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers at night as well. So being that I worked at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers as a guard after I earned my tomb identification badge, I've had a lot of interaction with Arlington National Cemetery staff. Here's what I'll say about Arlington National Cemetery staff. One, the higher level superintendent positions, you could look this up, John Metzler and Metzger. I might be mispronouncing that. My memory isn't serving me perfectly here, but he was the junior to the senior who was the superintendent of Arlington National Cemetery, and there's a lot of controversy behind him. Now, there's Arlington National Cemetery historians that we work with routinely, and there's also the men and women who remove the chains for us and police up the area around the Tomb of the Unknowns. First of all, let's start with the people in and around the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and Arlington National Cemetery as a whole. Amazing people. I've never had one bad interaction with them. They always had our backs. They were always in a mindset, in a position that the place they were working was sacred, and there was no exception to that rule. They understood our role, our duty, and how seriously we took our job, and they understood what to look for when it came to tourists or people interfering or potentially crossing the lines and getting near the Tomb of the Unknowns, because we obviously guarded the unknown from World War I, World War II, Korea, and the Vietnam War, and took that job very seriously. So with that said, those men and women who we operated day to day around the area were very respectful and very good human beings. I've in fact been back. There's a video on my story of me flipping a M14, a Tomb Guard rifle at the tomb quarters. It's so funny, the comments on those things. They're like, "Oh, this guy, he doesn't know what he's doing." It's like, one, I was a guard there. I think I know what I'm doing. And two, the actual flipping of the rifle is something that is ingrained in me even, oh my gosh, how long ago was this? 26 years ago? Wow, I'm getting old. So I was there and left the old guard in 2001 and then went into special forces right after that, right after 9/11, obviously. So it's muscle memory for me. I respect greatly everybody who works there and operates there, and the U.S. Army has a very difficult job in Arlington Cemetery. Even when I went back a couple years ago, I could see the attention to detail, and not much has changed. Even talking to guys that were there in the 70s and 80s, for my generation and on, nothing's really changed in the day-to-day operations of protecting the Tomb of the Unknowns and Arlington National Cemetery day-to-day operations. What I also will tell you is, one, the place is full of journalists, photographers, and the media constantly. If a state dignitary, if the President of the United States, if somebody of any importance comes to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier to lay a wreath, which President Donald Trump did, then he's going to be covered by media. He's going to be covered by cameras. I have been guarding the Tomb of the Unknowns and having my aviator sunglasses and stood 10 feet away from cameras on Memorial Day, dialing in their lenses on my face, which is super intimidating, but part of the job. Everywhere I went in the cemetery, I knew I was a representative of not only the Tomb of the Unknowns, not only Arlington National Cemetery, but also the U.S. Army, and I took that very seriously. Above my level, outside of the media exposure, to think that there's no media in Arlington National Cemetery is silly. What people are not allowed to do is basically build media packets and do mini documentary without permission. There's been documentaries done on Arlington National Cemetery, obviously, but you're not allowed to do that to benefit your campaign. But we're talking about former President Donald Trump in Arlington National Cemetery, laying a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns, being invited by the family into Section 60, where he took pictures by this is a standard issued, government issued headstone with the family members of those that were lost, for posing for pictures, not for political gain, but that's what the families requested. I mean, the families are proudly standing next to a former president of the United States, somebody who's running for president currently, and they're standing with him. And I saw a lot of people getting super offended that there was actually TikTok videos with solemn music and him honoring those that have served. Well, I can see how some people would be offended by that. But from somebody who served an entire career in special operations, in the infantry, who's a tomb guard, all the way to a sergeant major, I don't find any of that disrespectful. I'd like to get your opinion. If you think that's disrespectful, let me know in the comments, because opinions would vary on this. Now, obviously, if they're making a mockery of it, if they're out there, they're taking pictures, like my media guys, when we're around people who potentially have lost somebody, we're talking about a story of survival that's very sensitive when we're talking about sensitive topics. They know not to get like in people's faces and do that, because it's distasteful. It's also disrespectful. But standing back with a camera and documenting that's not only important for both Trump and his legacy and his memory and his memories, but also, most importantly, which is I think why it happened, for the family members who lost so many people. And the question I would ask is, one, we talked about it on Focal Point. It's actually the next week's episode, I believe, on Focal Point on Ironclad Productions. I'll link it down below. It's a new show me and Andy Stump are doing. But we talked about how the withdrawal from Afghanistan was a complete debacle, and how nobody was held accountable. The fact that nobody's been held accountable is a travesty. But also the fact that we're in the week, and also near the date of the complete withdrawal, and the actual anniversary of where 13 Americans lost their lives because of an incompetency. Not because that's just what happens when you're withdrawing. No, because people made bad decisions and people were incompetent, which led to 13 Americans being killed. Where is the administration on this? Where are they laying wreaths at Arlington National Cemetery? Why aren't they with the families of those who lost 13 people when they were in charge? And so what is the media doing? Obviously, they're doing what they do, spinning up propaganda. Now, I don't know how this went down, but here's what I know. If a Arlington National Cemetery high-level representative saw this going down and tried to stop it in the middle of it, that's unprofessional. Like, wait till it's done, file the complaint, talk to the people on the ground, but trying to literally get in the middle of this, which I imagine the reason this happened is because she saw them taking pictures, maybe even graveside, of family members, which the family members wanted pictures with Donald Trump to pay respects to their loved ones. They probably saw that. She probably tried to interject and then got shut down, as she should have got shut down. Now, I don't think that's disrespectful, and your opinion might vary on this, but here's what I also know in conclusion about what happens above the liaison, or at the liaison and above. It's super political. The superintendent position, the generals, the commander of the old guard, and all of the public relations officers, everything else is very political and it's very sensitive. I mean, for good reason, a lot of it is sensitive, but it gets very political. Why would Biden be allowed to go there, which he hasn't done any of that? I mean, when he went to lay the wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, look this up. He turned, actually, I'll get the video and clip it in. He turned around and literally was so confused that the sergeant of the guard had to escort and move him because he had no idea where he was at. And that's paying respect. That's an embarrassment. At my opinion, the country's most sacred shrine is the Tomb of the Unknowns in Arlington National Cemetery. You could take it as a whole. So that's my opinion on it. I'd like to hear your opinion on it. For even the national media to come out and say the Army made an unprecedented statement taking up for this Arlington. It's like, what? Who in the Army made that statement? They don't even have who in the Army made that statement. They just said the U.S. Army. Because a public affairs officer, a captain in the old guard who wrote a letter or made a statement is speaking for the U.S. Army? I don't think that's how it works. And I don't think that a representative in the U.S. Army would want to get more political by politicizing this and then leaking that document to CNN, NBC, ABC, and every other a leftist propaganda arm for Biden's administration. So, it's like, you want to keep politics out of it, and don't make it political. You made it political when you made this a story, including making it a physical altercation, and then that was leaked to every leftist corporate media organization, and that was the initial headline. Trump's team gets physical and disrespects Arlington National Cemetery. I don't think so. Where was everybody else in the administration paying respect to those 13 Americans who paid it all, made the ultimate sacrifice for incompetent politicians making wrong decisions? It blows my mind. It blows my mind. Tell me what you think about it. Hopefully we'll do an episode on Focal Point on this. I'll link it down below. I appreciate you guys. Till next time. Peace out.